The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Maple Street as I pulled my truck into the driveway, the engine ticking as it cooled. Another 14-hour day at the drafting table, working through structural calculations for a project. A custom home that would stand for generations if I'd done my job right. At 38, I'd built my reputation on that kind of permanence, the kind of work that doesn't crack under pressure. I grabbed my laptop bag and noticed Mr. Duffy watering his roses next door. The 72-year-old Vietnam vet had the sharp eyes of someone who'd learned to watch his surroundings, a habit that had kept him alive in the jungle and made him the neighborhood's unofficial security system. "Evening, Magnus," he called, lowering his hose. "How's the place coming along?" Foundations poured. Should be framing next week. I paused at my mailbox, something in his tone catching my attention. "Everything all right?" Mr. Duffy glanced toward my house, then back at me with the measured look of a man choosing his words carefully. "Probably nothing, but there was a black Lexus parked out front earlier. Fancy sedan, newer model. Stayed about an hour before taking off." My hand tightened on the mailbox key. "You get a good look at it?" "Good enough. Same car was parked down by the Johnson's place 3 days ago, but it wasn't visiting them." He adjusted his baseball cap, the gesture deliberate. "Figured you should know." The words hit like a structural failure. Sudden, devastating, changing everything I thought I knew about load-bearing capacity. "Thanks, Mr. Duffy. I appreciate you keeping an eye out." Inside, Eva greeted me with her usual warm smile, rising from the couch where she'd been reading. At 35, she still took my breath away. Auburn hair catching the light, green eyes bright with what I'd always believed was genuine affection. She wrapped her arms around my neck, pressing her lips to mine in a kiss that tasted like mint, tea, and familiarity. "How was your day?" she asked, her fingers smoothing my collar. The gesture felt practiced now, automatic. Long. The structural engineer had questions about the beam calculations. I studied her face, searching for something I couldn't name. "How about you? What did you get up to?" "Oh, the usual. Had lunch with Sarah, did some shopping downtown, picked up groceries." The words flowed easily, but something about her rhythm felt off, too casual, too prepared. "I made that chicken dish you like. It's staying warm in the oven." "Sounds perfect." I kissed her forehead, breathing in her perfume. Had she always worn this scent, or was it new? How many details had I stopped noticing in 5 years of marriage? During dinner, I found myself cataloging her responses like structural elements under stress. The way she described her lunch with Sarah, too many specifics about the restaurant, too few about the conversation, her mention of shopping but no bags in sight, the careful way she avoided meeting my eyes when discussing her afternoon. "You seem distracted," Eva said, refilling my water glass. "Everything okay?" "Just thinking about work." I forced a smile. "The project has some challenging angles." That night I lay awake staring at the ceiling while Eva slept beside me, her breathing steady and peaceful. The shadows from the streetlight created geometric patterns above me, familiar shapes that now seemed to shift and change when I wasn't looking directly at them. 5 years ago, Eva had been the one to suggest the prenuptial agreement. "I want our love to be pure," she'd said, taking my hand across the candlelit table where I'd just proposed. "Not about money or security, just us choosing each other every day." I'd been touched by her romantic idealism, impressed by her practicality. My architectural firm was just taking off, and protecting my business made sense. The prenup had been generous, not the ironclad fortress my lawyer had recommended, but fair enough that Eva would be comfortable if things went wrong. Now, staring at those shifting shadows, I wondered if Eva's foresight had been romantic idealism or cold calculation. The woman sleeping peacefully beside me had suggested protecting my assets with the same casual confidence she'd just lied about her afternoon. My architect's mind began working through the problem like a blueprint, analyzing load-bearing walls and potential failure points. If my marriage was built on deception, what other structural damage had I been ignoring? How long had the foundation been compromised? Outside, a car drove slowly down Maple Street, its headlights sweeping across my bedroom wall. I found myself listening for the sound of a luxury engine, the whisper of expensive tires on asphalt. The black Lexus existed. Mr. Duffy didn't make mistakes about details like that. Someone had been in my house, in my space, while I'd been working to build something lasting. Eva shifted beside me, murmuring something in her sleep. Her hand found mine automatically, a gesture that had once brought me comfort. Now it felt like evidence of how easily we perform intimacy, how natural it becomes to lie with our bodies even when everything else is falling apart. I squeezed her hand gently, already knowing this might be one of the last times. Tomorrow, I would start the careful work of discovering what I was really dealing with. Tonight, I would lie here in the darkness, watching shadows move across the ceiling, learning to see the difference between the structures we build and the ones we only imagine are there. I woke at 5:30, same as always, but everything felt different. Ava still slept curled against me, her breathing soft and regular, completely at peace. I envied her that peace as I slipped quietly from bed and padded to the kitchen to start coffee. The morning routine that had anchored our marriage for 5 years now felt like reconnaissance. I showered, noting that Eva had bought new shampoo, something expensive I didn't recognize. I dressed for work, studying her reflection in the dresser mirror as she stirred awake, hair tousled, looking innocent as a sleeping child. "Morning. Beautiful," she murmured, stretching like a cat in the warm sheets. "Morning. I've got an early client meeting, so I'm heading out." I bent to kiss her goodbye, tasting mint toothpaste and something else I couldn't identify. "What's your day looking like?" "Quiet. Maybe some errands this afternoon." She smiled, but her eyes didn't quite meet mine. "I'll probably be out when you get home." 20 minutes later, I was at Mr. Duffy's front door with 2 cups of coffee and a proposal that would have sounded insane a week ago. "I need a favor," I said, handing him the larger mug. "That Lexus you mentioned, if it shows up again, I'd appreciate a call." Mr. Duffy studied me over his coffee, his weathered face impassive. 40 years of marriage before losing his wife to cancer had taught him when not to ask questions. "You got it, cell phone?" I gave him my number, watching him program it into an ancient flip phone like a man who'd once called in artillery coordinates. "Just the facts. Make, model, license plate, if you can see it, how long it stays." "Roger that." He paused, sipping his coffee. "Magnus, I've seen a lot of situations go sideways. Sometimes knowing is worse than wondering. You sure about this?" "I'm sure I need to know what I'm dealing with." I met his eyes. "Thanks, Mr. Duffy, I won't forget this." My next stop was downtown, to the law offices of Mitchell, Carlson and Associates. Dave Mitchell had handled my business incorporation and the prenup. At 55, he'd seen enough marriages implode to skip the pleasantries when I explained why. I needed to see him. "Let's review your prenuptial agreement," he said, pulling out a thick file. "Refresh my memory on the specifics." As he spread the documents across his desk, the irony hit me again. Eva had insisted on reasonable terms. She'd keep her personal assets, receive modest support for 2 years if we divorced, maintain her car and jewelry. She'd even suggested adding a fidelity clause. "Interesting detail here," Dave said, pointing to page 3. "Adultery voids all support obligations and property claims. That was Eva's addition to the standard template. She suggested it herself. The memory felt surreal now. Said marriage should be about commitment, not convenience. Well, she built your escape hatch." Dave leaned back in his leather chair. "If you can prove infidelity, this prenup becomes a fortress. She walks away with what she brought in, nothing more." What constitutes proof? Video evidence is ideal. Photos work. Testimony from credible witnesses. The key is establishing a clear pattern of deception and adultery, not just suspicion. He fixed me with a serious look. Magnus, if you're going down this road, you need to be methodical. Document everything. Don't confront her until you have ironclad evidence. I understand. And Magnus? Dave's voice carried the weight of professional experience. Once you start this process, there's usually no going back. Make sure you're prepared for what you might find. I drove home with a different perspective, seeing my neighborhood through the lens of surveillance rather than comfort. Every parked car became suspicious, every routine interaction a potential witness. The subdivision I'd chosen for its family-friendly atmosphere now looked like a stage where private dramas played out behind manicured facades. Ava's Honda wasn't in the garage when I arrived. I spent the afternoon in my home office, supposedly working on a project, but actually researching private investigators and divorce precedents. The methodical nature of legal preparation soothed my analytical mind. This was just another complex project requiring careful planning and execution. At 4:15, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. The Lexus is back. I closed my laptop and walked to the living room window. There it was, a black Lexus GS parked brazenly at my curb, license plate clearly visible in the afternoon sun. The audacity of it struck me like a physical blow. This wasn't some careful affair conducted in hotel rooms or distant locations. This was happening in my house, in my bed, while I worked to support the life Eva and I had built together. I memorized the license plate and retreated to my office to run the registration. 20 minutes of online searches revealed the owner, Bradley Morrison, 42, CEO of Morrison Development Group. I recognized the name from charity events Eva and I had attended. Married, 2 children, notorious for his aggressive business practices and his wife's expensive jewelry. The pieces were falling into place with the inexorable logic of a structural collapse. Ava's new interest in afternoon errands, her expensive shampoo, her casual lies about lunch dates and shopping trips, the fidelity clause she'd insisted on adding to our prenup, not romantic idealism, but guilty conscience-seeking absolution. My phone rang. Mr. Duffy, his voice calm and factual. Your visitor just left. 47 minutes total. Same pattern. As before. Parked, went to your front door, stayed inside until 5 minutes before you usually get home. Thank you. My voice sounded steady, professional. Inside, something was crystallizing. Not rage, but cold purpose. I owe you dinner for this. Just take care of yourself, son. And remember, sometimes the best revenge is living well. That evening. Ava returned home, glowing with what I now recognized wasn't happiness, but the afterglow of passion spent elsewhere. She kissed me hello with lips that had been kissing another man 2 hours earlier, her hands touching me with fingers that had traced another body in our bed. How was your afternoon? I asked, my voice betraying nothing. Boring. Ran some errands, stopped by the grocery store. She began preparing dinner, moving through our kitchen with the easy familiarity of 5 years. Sarah might come by this weekend. Is that okay? Of course. I watched her hands as she chopped vegetables, the same hands that had held another man, had guided him into our bed, had betrayed every promise she'd ever made me. I'll probably be working anyway. The project needs finishing. That night, I lay awake again while Eva slept peacefully beside me. But this time I wasn't studying shadows on the ceiling. I was designing my next move, planning each step. Tomorrow, I would be ready. In my jacket pocket, my old college baseball bat waited in the trunk of my car, 34 inches of ash wood that had helped me win a conference championship 20 years ago. Some tools never lose their purpose. They just find new applications. The call came at 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday that had started like any other. Mr. Duffy's voice was steady, almost casual. Your friend in the Lexus just arrived. I was reviewing foundation specs when my phone buzzed, but those 7 words changed everything. The careful planning, the methodical evidence gathering, the cold preparation, it all crystallized into this moment. "Thank you," I said, closing my laptop with deliberate calm. "I'll take care of it from here." I drove home with my hand steady on the wheel, my breathing controlled, my mind sharp as architectural steel. The baseball bat lay in my trunk where it had waited for 3 weeks. Not a weapon of rage, but a tool of precise demolition. Every swing I'd ever taken had been calculated for maximum effect, and today would be no different. The black Lexus sat in my driveway like a monument to arrogance. Morrison hadn't even attempted discretion anymore. The car was positioned where anyone could see it, where Eva's neighbors would witness the daily corruption of my marriage. The man was marking territory, and apparently I was too pathetic to notice or care. I parked across the street and retrieved the bat from my trunk, feeling the familiar grip against my palms. The weight was perfect, the balance unchanged from my college days. Some memories live in muscle as much as mind. Morrison had chosen his weapon: money, charm, the thrill of taking what belonged to another man. I'd chosen mine. The Lexus was beautiful, in the way only German engineering could achieve. Sleek lines, every detail crafted for performance and status. I started with the driver's side headlight, a single swing that exploded the housing into crystalline fragments. The sound was satisfying, almost musical. The windshield required more force, spider webbing under the bat's impact, before shattering completely. Safety glass cascaded onto expensive leather seats in glittering waterfalls. I moved methodically around the vehicle, passenger headlight, tail lights, side mirrors folding like broken wings under precise strikes. Each blow was therapeutic, releasing 3 weeks of controlled fury into productive demolition. The hood dented with a satisfying boom, the pristine paint job scoring under ash wood. Morrison's pride and joy transformed from luxury statement to twisted metal sculpture, every panel telling the story of consequences delivered with interest. Was breathing hard but thinking clearly when I pocketed the bat and approached my own front door. The house key turned smoothly in the lock. My house, my sanctuary, now violated by strangers playing out their sordid drama in spaces I'd designed for love and permanence. The sound hit me first. Eva's voice, breathless and urgent, coming from upstairs. Not words, just the primal sounds of passion, the gasps and moans of 2 people lost in physical pleasure. My wife, in our bedroom, with another man. I pulled out my phone and started recording as I climbed the stairs I'd walked thousands of times. Each step felt like descending into evidence, every creak of the floorboard documenting the destruction of my marriage. The sounds grew louder, more urgent, Ava's voice calling out in ways that cut deeper than simple infidelity. The bedroom door was slightly ajar, their carelessness complete, their arrogance absolute. Through the gap, I could see everything. Ava arched beneath Morrison's pale body, her hands gripping his shoulders, her face transformed by pleasure I'd thought belonged to our marriage alone. Morrison's expensive suit lay crumpled on the floor beside Ava's dress, both costumes discarded for this performance of betrayal. I recorded 30 seconds of clear, unmistakable evidence before sliding the phone back into my pocket. The video would destroy them both. Ava's support claims, Morrison's marriage, their reputations, their carefully constructed lives. But first, they needed to understand that actions have immediate consequences. I kicked the door open with enough force to bang it against the wall. The sound exploded through the room like a gunshot, freezing them mid-motion in a tableau of guilt and shock. Ava's scream died in her throat as Morrison scrambled to cover himself, his face cycling through emotions: surprise, fear, desperate calculation. "Jesus Christ, I can explain," Morrison started, reaching for his scattered clothes. I was already moving. The first swing caught him across the ribs as he tried to stand, doubling him over with a sound like air escaping a punctured tire. The second strike hit his thigh, sending him crashing into the dresser Eva and I had picked out for our first anniversary. "Get out," I said, my voice level despite the adrenaline flooding my system. "Get dressed and get out of my house." Morrison struggled into his pants while Eva screamed my name, wrapping a sheet around herself like armor that couldn't protect her from what came next. He limped toward his shirt and jacket, whimpering with each movement, his arrogance replaced by the animal fear of a man who'd discovered real consequences. "Magnus, please, let me explain." Eva's voice cracked with desperation. "It's not what you think. We can work through this." I looked at her, really looked at her, for what I knew would be the last time. The woman I'd loved, trusted, built a life with. The woman who'd suggested our prenup, who'd insisted on fidelity clauses, who'd played the role of devoted wife while orchestrating her own escape plan. "Ava, you're already dead to me." The words came out flat, emotionless, carrying the finality of a demolition order. "You have 30 minutes to pack what you need. Everything else stays here." Morrison had managed to get dressed, though his shirt was inside out and his expensive shoes unlaced. He limped toward the door, pausing only to look back at the wreckage of what had been his afternoon pleasure. "We'll talk about this like civilized people," he said, trying to salvage some dignity. There's nothing to discuss." I stepped aside to let him pass. "Check your driveway when you get home. Structural integrity is my specialty." He limped down the stairs and out my front door, moving like a man who'd learned that some houses aren't safe to burgle. Through the bedroom window, I watched him survey his destroyed Lexus, his face cycling through disbelief, rage, and fear. The car barely started, engine grinding against damaged components, but it limped away down Maple Street, trailing pieces of itself. Ava was still crying, still trying to explain when I began throwing her clothes out the bedroom window. Dresses, shoes, jewelry, everything scattered across the front lawn like debris from a demolished building. The neighbors would see, would talk, would understand that Eva Morrison, no, Eva, whatever her maiden name was, had been evicted from respectability. "Magnus, please. 5 years. We can fix this." I looked at her one final time. "Eva, we've been divorced since the moment you brought him into our bed. You just didn't know it yet." She left 20 minutes later, arms full of hastily packed belongings, her face streaked with tears and mascara. I watched from the living room window as she loaded her Honda, still wrapped in a bedsheet because I'd thrown all her clothes outside. The cuss. Neighborhood was quiet again, shadows lengthening toward evening. Mr. Duffy appeared at his mailbox, giving me a subtle nod before retreating inside. Some operations require witnesses, others require discretion. He understood the difference. I walked through my house now, seeing it with new eyes. The bed would need replacing, Ava's personal touches would disappear, but the foundation was sound, the structure intact. Some buildings survive renovation better than the lives lived inside them. In my office, I uploaded the video to my laptop and made copies. Tomorrow, I would deliver them to Dave Mitchell and let him handle Eva's legal destruction. Tonight, I would research Bradley Morrison's home address and decide how to share my evidence with his wife. The house felt larger already, emptied of deception and filled with possibility. Sometimes demolition is just the first phase of construction, clearing away what's rotten so something better can be built in its place. Dave Mitchell's office felt like a war room 6 weeks after the confrontation. Legal documents spread across his conference table like battle plans, each page documenting Eva's systematic destruction. The prenuptial agreement lay open to page 3. Her own fidelity clause now a sword at her throat. "She's fighting everything," Dave said, sliding Ava's latest motion across the table. Claims emotional distress, temporary insanity, duress when signing the prenup. Her lawyer's throwing everything at the wall. I studied the legal briefs. What are her chances? 0. The video evidence is ironclad, and she literally wrote the fidelity clause herself. Dave leaned back, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. She's hemorrhaging money on legal fees, fighting a battle she can't win. Her lawyer knows it, but she's paying him to try anyway. The divorce proceedings had unfolded. Ava's attempts to claim marital assets crumbled against the prenup's clear language. Her pleas for spousal support died under the weight of recorded evidence. She'd kept her Honda, her jewelry, and the clothes I hadn't thrown on the lawn. Exactly what she'd brought into the marriage 5 years ago. There's something else, Dave said, pulling out another file. Morrison's wife filed for divorce 3 days after you sent her the evidence. She's going for blood, claiming adultery, demanding half his assets, full custody of their children. The parallel destruction satisfied me in ways I hadn't expected. Morrison's wife had proven more ruthless than I'd imagined, hiring the most aggressive divorce attorney in the city and systematically dismantling her husband's comfortable life. She'd moved fast, freezing bank accounts and claiming the family home before Morrison could mount a defense. I'd done my research on Morrison's wife, Catherine, 40, former prosecutor turned full-time mother with a steel spine and connections throughout the legal community. My anonymous package had included the full video, Morrison's license plate information, and a timeline of his visits to my house. She'd used the intelligence like a tactical nuclear weapon. Morrison's business is suffering too, Dave continued. Word got out about his divorce, and apparently he's lost 2 major contracts. His partners are distancing themselves, and his wife's lawyer is claiming he used company resources to facilitate his affairs. The ripple effects had exceeded my expectations. Morrison's arrogance had made him enemies in the business community, men who'd tolerated his success but relished his downfall. His reputation for taking what he wanted had finally met consequences he couldn't buy or intimidate his way out of. 6 months after the confrontation, I drove past Eva's new apartment near the highway, a cramped 2-bedroom in a complex that screamed temporary living. Her Honda looked older somehow, dirtier, like everything else in her diminished world. I'd seen her at the grocery store once, wearing clothes from Target instead of the boutiques she'd preferred during our marriage. She worked retail now, women's clothing at a department store, helping customers who earned more in a month than her annual salary. The woman who'd played house with Morrison's expensive lifestyle now folded sweaters for minimum wage, her dreams of luxury reduced to employee discounts on clearance items. Morrison's fall had been even more spectacular. The divorce settlement had claimed half his business assets, the house, and most of his liquid wealth. His former arrogance had been replaced by desperate networking, trying to rebuild contacts who now treated him like radioactive waste. The man who'd casually violated my marriage now struggled to maintain his own basic dignity. I'd seen him once, at a business conference, standing alone at a reception where he'd once commanded attention. His expensive suits had been replaced by off-the-rack alternatives, his confident posture reduced to nervous glances and forced smiles. The predator had become prey, hunting for scraps in an ecosystem that no longer recognized his dominance. The neighborhood had absorbed the drama with suburban discretion. Ava's belongings scattered on the lawn had provided weeks of whispered conversations, but the details had been contained to knowing glances and carefully neutral inquiries about my well-being. Mr. Duffy had never mentioned his surveillance role, maintaining operational security. My architectural practice had thrived in the aftermath, perhaps because clients sensed the authentic confidence of a man who'd handled crisis with methodical precision. The project had been completed ahead of schedule and under budget, earning referrals that kept me busy through the winter months. More importantly, I'd learned to trust my instincts again. The woman I'd been dating, Sarah, a civil engineer with her own firm, appreciated directness over charm, substance over performance. She'd heard about the divorce through professional networks, but never asked for details, understanding that some structures are best left undisturbed once they've been properly demolished. Ava still drove past occasionally, parking where the Lexus had once sat, staring at the life she'd destroyed with the same calculating mind that had once planned her betrayal. I watched these pathetic surveillances through my security cameras, feeling nothing beyond mild curiosity about her motivations. Sometimes I wondered if she understood her destruction, how thoroughly she'd orchestrated her own downfall by insisting on the very prenuptial terms that had left her defenseless. The fidelity clause hadn't been romantic idealism, it had been guilty conscience seeking absolution. But conscience, like structural engineering, operates according to laws that don't bend for wishful thinking. The video evidence had served its purpose and been secured in my attorney's files, a nuclear deterrent ensuring Eva's continued cooperation with divorce terms. Morrison's wife had used her copy to devastating effect, proving that the same evidence could destroy multiple targets when deployed strategically. 6 months later, I slept peacefully in a bedroom furnished with my own choices, ate dinner at a table I'd selected without compromise, and lived in a house that felt like home again rather than a stage for performance art. The foundation had held. Only the surface structures needed replacing. Some buildings survive catastrophic damage better than others. The key is understanding which elements are load-bearing and which are merely decorative. Love, I'd learned, was architectural, built on foundation principles that either supported weight or collapsed under pressure. Eva had tested those foundations and found them stronger than the marriage they'd been designed to support. And that's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a thumbs up and drop a comment below. Your support helps the algorithm push my content further. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps me keep creating more stories for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.